You are listening to the Baobab Project. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us under the Baobab tree from wherever you are in the world today. We are joining you from Halifax, Nova Scotia. We've got so much to explore, from culture to lifestyle to health, relationships, education, and so much more. Now over to our podcast host for today.
Good evening and welcome to the first podcast of the Baobab Project, an initiative aimed to educate our community about the experiences and contributions people of African ancestry and amongst other topics at the Mount. I'm your host, Nicholas, and I'll be joined today by an amazing and diverse group of panelists, students and staff alike, to discuss the experiences of Black students at the Mount. So we'll take a few minutes to introduce each of our panelists and to speak a bit about themselves and their backgrounds. Noemi, would you like to go?
Hi, I'm Noemi. I go to the Mount, as it was said. I am of Caribbean descent. More specifically, my family's from Haiti, but I was born and raised in Quebec, and I've been living in Nova Scotia for 4 years now.
Thank you very much. Temilola, would you like to go next?
So I'm Temilola, and I'm from Nigeria, and I've been in Canada, Nova Scotia, for 2 years now. And I just completed my master's in applied human nutrition at the Mount.
For sure. Thank you for contributing. Renaj, you're next.
Hi, I am Renaj. My background, originally from the Bahamas. I've been in Canada since 2006. I keep forgetting how long that is. And I go to the Mount, and I study sociology here. So this is my second degree here.
Okay, thank you very much. And our final student that we have here is Faisal. Faisal, are you able to speak?
Yes. Hi, hello, my name is Faisal. I study in the Mount, and I'm a second year student. I came to Canada in 2017. I went to London, Ontario, and after that I arrived in the Mount.
Happy to hear. Thank you. All right, and now we'll move on to our staff. We have two staff here with us today as guests, and I'll introduce first Susie. Would you be able to speak? Thank you.
Hi, yes, my name is Dr. Susie Brigham. I'm a professor in the Faculty of Education, and I come from an immigrant family, and my background would be from the island of St. Helena, which is in the South Atlantic Ocean off the coast of West Africa, and British. So that's my background.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And finally, we have Randy Headley. Would you be able to speak as well?
My name is Randy, and I'm the Black Student Support Advisor at Mount Saint Vincent University. I came to MSVU in 2003 as a student and went on to do 2 degrees, and now I'm a staff at MSVU. I'm really excited to be a part of this panel.
Okay, great. So quite a diverse set of panelists. So today we'll be talking mostly about the experiences of Black students at the Mount. So I'll start things off by addressing the main theme today. The main question here is, tell me about your most recent experiences in a post-secondary institution as a Black student. And I will kick it off in the same order. So, Noemi, would you be able to go first?
Of course. So I am currently completing my honors in psychology, and I had the amazing opportunity to do my research project around racial stress, more specifically the effects that it has on our executive functioning. And then it turns out that I'm not really doing that after all, because the way I wanted to look at this is through EEG technology. So they put like the cap on your hair. And one of the main hurdle in this research is that like our hair doesn't work with that type of cap. So right now I'm working into changing the way that we conduct EEG studies based on other prototypes done that in the States, and try to bring that here and just change altogether how we do things and trying to make them more inclusive for everybody.
Sure, yeah. Creating some systemic change, I see.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Temilola. Thank you very much.
Okay. Also, previously I was previous Black student support assistant here at the Mount, and I got to meet like a lot of people through that, because when I had initially got into the Mount, it was kind of tough for me to adjust to the environment actually. So my first day in the class, I was the only Black student in the class. So it was, I would say that my experience, because I've completed my master's program, my experience here at the Mount was both mixed, pleasant, and also a bit of challenges, a lot of challenges in the Black students. Yeah.
Sure. So I can see here that we are addressing some both positive aspects with trying to sustain some change, but we also acknowledge some of the negatives. So let's move on to that a bit more. Renat, would you be able to speak a little bit about your experience so far as a Black student?
Of course. Yeah, well, this is my first semester at the Mount. I previously, as I said, I did my first degree before, and it was at Acadia University. And yeah, that was, I did a Bachelor of Science in honors there. And I find just like kind of being I guess like a immigrant to Canada, and that was like my first time in Canada, it was a bit of a culture shock. A lot of the classes were, I guess like, I just remember like my first kind of year walking into like a large lecture hall, and I see all these kind of like white faces just like staring at me. In the Bahamas, where the majority, part of the majority, was just kind of like we're now being part of a minority. So that was very interesting. In my graduating year, when I got my diploma, I was the only Black person in my graduating year to graduate with an honors degree in science at Acadia that year. So that was a bit, I don't know, like these kind of like jarring experiences for me. So yeah, I mean, so far, and like coming to the mountain's been quite interesting. Everything is online, so I don't really have that kind of that experience when you walk in the classroom, but I'm sure I will once we start classes. But I mean, so far so good.
Yeah, and we'll certainly talk about a bit of those issues as to how the online perspective has changed given the pandemic. But before we address that, we will just speak about our last panelist. So Faisal, would you be able to give some background as to your experience as a Black student in a post-grad position? Thank you.
So coming from London, Ontario, I would say at first I felt like Nova Scotia was going to be scary because like it's in a small little island and stuff. But like when I came here, I was actually very welcome. It felt actually very great meeting new people. And then like at the same time when we came to the Mount, they gave an orientation basically. And they gave us this exercise where in this exercise we get to meet other people. At the same time, they had exchange students at that time. And it was pretty fun because you got to know like different people. Like I met people from the Netherlands over there, people from France. It was different, like very different. And yes. I really liked it actually. And thank you.
So I'm really picking up here that one of the main issues, and we'll tackle it right away, was perhaps the lack of diversity within the programs. And in addition to that, there was not as much facilitation to account and allow for a lot of Black students to thrive. So let's go back to that point. Renaj, can you mention some of those barriers that you say that you faced outside of the lack of diversity within your schooling education here in Canada? Were there any other barriers that you might have faced? And how did you overcome them?
I guess like I keep drawing on my experience from Acadia and coming to here too, but a lot of barriers I faced with my education is that as an immigrant too, like my fees were higher, and my parents pretty much were in like a different country, and basically like I had like a complete kind of lack of support. And I feel like a lot of the problems I kind of face, like a lot of the support systems that I kind of face as a immigrant and a kind of Black student as well, were intersexual in nature. So like the school really didn't really like hadn't really seen much of my issues before, kind of thing. So I didn't really feel like I had like much of a support group.
Yep.
And I think now I guess like going at the MSVU as well, I feel like a lot of issues kind of affect me in terms of like racial issues and whatnot. And I guess like I feel that it's hard not to carry those with you when you're studying or when you're in school and whatnot. And I feel that like a lot of people, I'm very cognizant that like a large number of my classmates probably don't experience that. So yeah, I mean, those are just kind of just like very kind of simple barriers that I've been facing so far.
Yeah, I feel like that is a lot of those things are things that we can all sympathize with as Black students, especially coming to a predominantly white country, right? So, Temilola, just with that whole support system and network, you came here practically on your own as well. Can you also relate somewhat to what Renaj has mentioned?
Oh yes, because I think for us, again, as Africans, you get here and the major challenge is you don't even understand what racism is, because it's all new to you, because you've been hearing about racism and things begin to happen. And when you have certain issues, you don't know if you should term it as racism. So I think those were one of the challenges I had when I came. First of all, I was introduced to a class that I was the only Black person. And again, it was when I got to some of my classes, there was this whole umbrella of people of color, which was really strange to me. And I began to wonder, like, who are the people of color and who are the people of no color? Like, those were the questions I had at that point. Like, so how do you just classify us? It was really, really strange. And most importantly, it was hard to understand what racism was. Not understand, sorry. It was hard to understand if something was racism or if it wasn't. To identify it actually. So I would say that was like a very big challenge to me. And each time, and again, amongst, when you have other like community of Black students, at times when you raise something, they feel like you're overreacting. Like, oh, it might not just be racism. So at times you don't want to talk about it. So I think those were like the major challenges I had when I came.
So a lot of cultural barriers and differences as well. Even within the community, we all come from different perspectives, right? So I guess too, just adding to that with the accommodation aspect, with cultural barriers that exist, for example, and I want to lead more to the research end of it. So Noemi, you mentioned that within your research, there was a lack of Black accommodation into the type of psychological research that you do. Might you be able to speak a bit on that? And how did you feel knowing that these accommodations were not in place?
Yeah, of course. So I think the reason why there's no accommodation is because those tools or the topics that we study weren't designed or developed with us in mind, because we're not in academia doing research. So I think it's really a reflection of who has access to academia, who has access to post-secondary education, and who is willing to study those topics, because it's not because somebody of color is in academia that they necessarily want to pursue that as a research interest. And the way I came about to kind of figuring this was an issue is that I participated myself in an EEG study.
Yes.
And so normally you book a participant for about 2 hours. And the exclusion criterion was that you cannot wear a protective style or braids or whatnot. And my hair was not in a protective style. So I was like, I'm good to go, Yes. But I got there and I was there for 4 hours. 4 hours, because they didn't know how to make it work. They didn't know, like, they were so discouraged, and I felt for them, but it triggered a lot of like childhood trauma and just like all those space. You're like, oh, okay, well, this space is not designed for me. I'm not supposed to be here. So there was kind of that in the background. And then when I decided myself to pursue EG, I was like, we need to make this a component and change the way we do things, because how can you say that you're a diverse science and an inclusive science when the tools that we still use haven't even been looked into?
Yeah.
So that was kind of my motor for beginning my research.
Yeah, those aspects are in many ways unnerving, and it's one of the barriers that we face constantly, right? So from an advocacy standpoint, even within our research, we still have to advocate for change within that to make it more of an intersectional approach. So talking more even about intersectionalities, we all have had different challenges. How were you able to overcome those challenges and thrive within your study in time at the Mount or your post-secondary institutions? And I'll open this up to any of the panelists. So Temilola?
Okay, yes, I just wanted.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I would say that for me, over time, because it was after I became after, like, the time I applied to become the Black Student Support Assistant was when I heard about the Black Student Support Center, right? So I would say at that time, there were so many conversations that we had around this whole, situation about inclusion and, challenges that we had within the school. Like, it opened my eyes to a lot of things and made me, like, I was able to understand things that I couldn't understand at the initial stage when I come. So I would say that really helped me in so many aspects to overcome the challenges that I was facing. Because first of all, I know that for example, we have like discussions in class about, there was one time I had this presentation about racism within dietetics in one of my classes, and I was just talking. I really gave a lot of examples, and at the end of the presentation, everyone was looking at me like it was more of a pity party than, I felt it kind of made me feel somehow like, was I not supposed to say those things? Because more like everyone was feeling pity for the community. So having the Black student support at that time, they used to have a Black coffee meeting. So we had some of those discussions. I raised some of the issues I was facing, and like I felt like it felt more like a safe space for me.
Yeah.
And I think being able to talk about those things made it better. Knowing that there are people who want to listen to your stories, there are people who want to know about your challenges. It's not just about you facing those challenges, but people want to listen to them. Yeah. So that was how I was able to overcome.
Certainly. Yeah, so creating that safe space and just an environment where you feel safe to unload and express those feelings. Renaj, would you like to add to that? I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I think that Tamula really raised a lot of great points that I resonate with, and I think that definitely talking it out helps. Definitely therapy helps for sure. And I think for me personally, I feel like as a person, as someone who is also an immigrant too, coming into Canada, I think that I came in with this mindset that cool, I'm just like everyone else, because very similar to what Kamola was saying is that, back in my country, we don't really talk about racism unless it's a joke or something. And fun fact is I never actually identified as Black before I came here, right? It was literally only when I came here and people started to treat me differently, and people started to I remember my first year at Acadia, I was sitting in the cafeteria, and if everyone knows the case in the valley, and this one girl was just staring at me, right? Yeah. I mean, but not in a good way. And I just was with my roommate, and I was just okay, what's going on, right? And he was like, oh, don't mind her, right? Some people here has never seen a Black person up close before. So I'm just okay, it's so strange. That was so strange to me. And I think that that idea of thinking that I'm just like everybody else. I mean, I am just like everyone else, but that's not how the world sees me, right? So I think that a lot of my cognitive dissonance kind of like dissipated once I became to accept that. Like, okay, like I accept that I'm different, and I accept that how people see me are different. And I think that like I accept that like I have to work harder than like my white peers, right? Like I accept that like I have certain challenges that my white peers don't have. And I mean, like, it sucks, but right, like I think that it's better than, kind of like being in this like internal conflict and trying to like, like trying to accept things as they aren't, right? So I think that that really kind of helped me overcome those barriers. Plus, my parents back home are kind of hooking at me to be successful, and that's also an added pressure that I have that other people don't have, right? Like my parents, like they're in Bahamas. I mean, like Bahamas okay, but like they don't have a lot, right? Like I mean, they struggled a lot back there, and just a few years ago we had Dorian, and like that really like decimated my parents' house, and we've been having like hurricanes like all throughout my whole life and stuff like that. So it's really hard for people to kind of get ahead. So like me coming to Canada and Bahamas, like from the Bahamas, it's a huge thing in my family. So, I think that I just try to embrace that added pressure and be like, okay, you know what, like, I use that to kind of drive me forward, right? If I'm feeling down, I think about that and I go, you know what, people are looking at me, and I know a lot of people also want me to fail as well. And I just kind of, I don't know, like, I try to use that to I guess, like, push forward.
Yeah, those are great points. And, like our success is dependent on so many aspects, right? You mentioned like your socioeconomic determinants, for example, and just some of the traumas too, right? Because, you're coming to a predominantly white country. There's going to be cases of covert or overt racism that can influence how your academia also prolongs. So there are many other ways, and I'm sorry for that. We have time for one more. So Naomi or Faisal, would you like to provide some input?
It's okay. Like going back to Renaj's point, like with the steering. I remember like at one part when I came like in the mount as well, like I can relate to it, where it's like there were many people of white descent, you could say. Like at some point I looked at myself and I was like, am I perfect like in this way, or like am I different in some way or form sometimes? And like the same thing as Renaj, where like I have to head back every day and like call my parents because they're far away. And that's all I can say. Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Thank you for sharing, Faisal. So that was lead quite well into our next questions, which is some of those interactions that you've had with fellow students, and extended to even staff at the Mount or Acadia or any institution that you've been at. How has that been like? How have your interactions been with some of your staff, students, professors, you name it? I'll open up the floor.
I can go ahead unless anyone wants to kind of jump in on me. You know what? I'll start with experience at the Mount. I think, there's one experience where, so I was in a class and we were, like I like talk a lot in my class, right? If you can't tell. So I said a point, and then a student after me also said, like, wanted to kind of reference my point, right? And so as I said, I talk a lot in class. The teacher says my name like all the time, right? And the person was like, "Oh yeah, like I want to reference him, but like I don't know his name, and so whatever." Like, but like I think like that was like his words, right? Like, "Oh, like I don't know his name, so whatever." And then like they continued to keep talking, and then the teacher said, "Oh, okay, well, if everyone just want to like say their name ahead of time when they speak, that'll be great." And I just was thinking, I was just like, okay, first of all, like that person could literally just ask me what my name, like, like how to say my name, right? Like it's not that difficult, right? And I'm just like, if my name was like Bob or Derek or something like that, I don't think you'd be saying that at all, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like I'm just like, anyway, I think like that just kind of irked me a bit, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, and also like these like, European names that like I have to know, you know what I mean? Like that are like not very intuitive to me, like Donovan or whatever, like whatever. Like I'm just, so yeah, that's my piece on that. I see. Hey, only wants to say something. I really want to hear what she has to say.
Yeah, Noemi, go for it.
Oh my goodness. I want to piggyback off that name thing so much.
Yeah.
I don't understand. It's not complicated. If you don't understand somebody's name, just ask politely for them to repeat and learn it. And I've had this problem ever since I came here. I never thought my name was complicated, but apparently it causes people a lot of confusion. And for the longest time, I used to not correct people. And I was just like, whatever, it's fine. Like I don't want to spend energy correcting people, but as time went on, like when you're called out in class and the professor says your name wrong, like, no, like the thought you bring to the class is yours. It should be tied to your name.
Yes.
So now I've corrected myself in that way. And when somebody says my name wrong, I'm like, no, it's not Naomi. It's not Amy. It's Noemi. And even sometimes at the end of the class, like just not to put them on the spot because don't want to cause a scene, but I will go to them and just like show them the phonetic spelling on my phone, and then they get it, and they're fine for the rest of the term mostly.
Tamilola, would you like to add to that as well? I see you have your hands up.
Oh yes. Sorry, this will be a little bit different because you asked about interaction. So I remember one time in class, and that same class, I was also the only Black person. So there was this conversation about racism and all of that, then about the employment gap. Then there was this guy who just was saying, oh, no, there's no employment gap. Maybe Black people are not being employed because they are not, maybe some of them are not capable. They don't have the requirements. Maybe they don't meet up to the requirements. Then someone else said, is that not racist? That sounds racist. Then he said, no, my best friend is Black. That was the first time like, oh, I have a best friend that is Black. I'm like, so, like, I had to ask questions. I'm like, so how does that relate to, being racist? Like, I wasn't even saying it was racist, but like, there's always that conversation. Anytime you want to have conversations with people, they're like, oh, first of all, let me just tell you, my stepbrother is Black. So we are very, I don't know if you guys hear that a lot.
A lot of microaggressive and racial undertones when it comes to those transactions. Faisal, would you be willing to add as well?
Yeah, I remember like at one point, like I had a professor who was Arab, and at one time I walked up to him and I started talking Arabic with him. So another person comes by next to me and he tells me, do Arab people like do they have Black people like who speak Arabic? And I was like, yeah, one person I'm speaking Arabic in front of you right now. And they're like, can you speak more? Like, can you say more? And I was like, yeah. And then I start like, and he's like, yeah, can you teach me? And to some point it triggered me because I was like how can people not know like or like understand like there are different cultures, there are different people, some way, some form, and like when I told them about like Sudan, like my country, a lot of people like didn't know about it at first, and they were like asking me where it was on the map and like where it was, and I was like, do they really not teach them like about other countries and like geography and stuff? And I was like, that's kind of it. But like I remember at some point as well when I was in the Mount, I really missed like talking Arabic. So I would go to that professor and it was great because at the end of the day, like I realized like if you create good relationships with your professors, you will somehow like tend to create other ways like they will help you out. And like I remember this professor helped me out like in my resume, and he was one of the references. All right, thank you.
Oh. So a combination of both some unpleasant, but we also have some good experiences as well. That support group. So Ranaj, we have time for one more, so you'll be up.
Okay, I'll just say very quickly, like as someone from the Bahamas, like especially from the Caribbean, I don't know if Hawaii also has the same experience, but like my favorite line is like, "Oh, you're from the Bahamas? What are you doing here? Like, oh, I would love to be in the beaches and like I wouldn't leave the Bahamas if I was you. Why are you even here in our free healthcare and our our higher social economic and our universities and our justice? Like, wow, and I'm just like, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
but I mean, like, honestly, like it didn't annoy me the first 50 times, but I think like after maybe like the 238th, I think I kind of got like, you know what, I'm kind of tired of hearing this, so I just to kind of piggyback off what Faisal was talking about like don't people like educate other people about other countries. I'm just like, bro, like the Bahamas isn't just like a beach, like I mean, like we're literally like, do I mean like, oh, but like wouldn't you just go to the beach all day? What? Okay, and do what? Like, do I mean like, right?
Yeah.
Like you're in Nova Scotia, like, do you like ski all day? Like, why are you asking me this question? Like, it's just anyway, so not that.
And, it's just so interesting that we can all talk about this and laugh about it, but it's truly unnerving experiences that we go through, right? And we're experiencing it from different facets and aspects within our educational and subsequently our career. But just to take a switch from this, I am going to ask the faculty and staff. So we have 2 faculty and staff joining us today. So how do you interact with Black students at the Mount?
Okay, I guess I could go before Randy, and if that's okay with you, Randy. Okay.
That's okay.
Great. So yes, as I mentioned, I teach in the Faculty of Education at the Mount, and when I arrived teaching here in 2004, there was at least 1 or 2 folks of African descent on faculty. And so for the past few years, it's just been myself that I know of who identifies of African descent. And we're excited to say that we're expecting some more folks that will come in very soon, I hope, who will be of African descent. And I think that's, to me, a wonderful signal to change at the Mount. And I and many other folks are going to be very happy to have more people of African descent on faculty. I think it really does make a difference to students so that they see themselves reflected in the faculty and not just, for example, in the cleaning staff, because that's where I see most folks on staff are usually in the maintenance and the cleaning sections. So yeah, that to me is an important signal. So just going back to listening to your experiences, which I really appreciate hearing, and I've been doing research projects looking at students. For example, I had a SHIRK project looking at students who are traditionally underrepresented at universities, and that included people of African descent across the country. And a lot of what I've been hearing you say is very much reflected in those research findings. And so I try to be informed by how I teach with those research findings and trying to understand what, as a faculty member, I should be aware of, and how I should, be within this institution, within any institution. I think we all need to be cognizant of our own identities. And so in terms of interacting, as your question was, how would I interact with people of African descent? I would just say that, to me, my critical role is, as a professor, to ensure that peoples of African descent, and no matter what they're here for, whether they are on the cleaning staff or whether they are here as a student or as a fellow Black colleague, is not only just to make them feel welcome, but for them to feel included. And there is a difference in those two things, to be welcome and to be included. So as a professor, my goals are to, make sure that my curriculum is as broad and as inclusive as possible. So I try to look at my course outline, and I look at the readings that I'm asking my students to read. If I see, a predominance of white authors, I will need to check myself on that. Or if it's predominantly male authors, I need to, again, go back and do more research to ensure that my curriculum is more inclusive. And then, of course, I'm doing things like class activities that help people find a space to offer their own personal perspectives, so their individual lived experiences. There should be a space for those stories to be connected to the curriculum. And that never means signaling out a student and saying, hey, you're from Nigeria, tell us how it is in Nigeria. Or looking at one student and making assumptions to say, oh, she's Black, she can tell us how it is for the Black people. So always, never calling out people to speak as a representative of a whole race and of a whole nation, because I found that happening myself as a student, as if I could speak for all Black people, and that is a problem. And so I would avoid that at all costs. But I would find ways, where stories could be shared, but not being put on the spot. And I think, in addition to feeling included academically, it's important to be included socially. So things that I try to do is ensure that, I offer tea and coffee in my classes. If the classroom is next to my office, I'll just say, hey, you need a cup of tea or a cup of coffee? It's in my office. I can just boil up the kettle. And so I will do that as much as I can. And we have potlucks. I know I'm not supposed to say that because I'm not supposed to have potlucks, but I have potlucks. And we share food at different times, throughout the term. And we meet in coffee shops and restaurants after classes sometimes.
Yes.
That to me is not a problem for a professor and a student, a group of students. It's not like me and one student, but, through the lifelong learning program, we've often had opportunities to eat together in the evening or, whenever. And that's usually a big group of maybe 10 people. And wherever that can be facilitated, that to me is a wonderful way for people to get to know not only me, but their classmates. And that to me is an important part of the social. And just one other quick thing I wanted to say. I know I've talked an awful long time, and my apologies.
No, that's okay.
The other thing is just about ensuring that the things we do in class are also diverse, so that the students are not just sitting there and listening to me ramble and talk and talk. We try to do a variety of things. And, we've done singing, we've done choral reading, we've done using the arts. We do a lot of small group and big group. We do a lot of physical movement wherever that's possible. And we've had field trips. So those things to me are just to, reinforce the fact that we learn in a variety of different ways. And if we can be open to different ways of knowing and different ways of being and different ways of learning, I think that can be helpful. So I'm going to stop there, but thank you for the opportunity.
No, that was a truly thoughtful answer, Susie, and I'm sure the members of our panelists and our guests today truly appreciate that we have that support network within our university, and in addition to that, you provide an inclusive space for us to feel welcomed. So thank you very much. And on to Randy, if you can speak briefly about the same question. How have you interacted with Black students within the Mount?
Well, this is part of my job and career, so that's as brief as it can get, but I can go beyond that and just share some additional experiences. As I look at, listen to Susie's speech there just now. It's a long speech, Susie, but it was well worth it. I think one thing that she forgot to list is the fact that she automatically is the go-to person in the faculty for Black students. And, many times I have to question myself before I go to Susie's office. Who else has gone in before me? Should I wait another day? I just have to weigh that because I understand her perspective. Me being one of the few Black staff on campus, I can't tell you how many times I've been sought out by so many folks. So I totally understand that where Susie's position lies in terms of having a number of Black students approaching her about research, about life, about just about everything. I'll share a story. One student said in a research that I was doing, she said, when I came to the office space, and this is when I was working in the registrar's office, she said, when I came to your office space, and I saw you sitting behind that desk, I just felt at ease. Said, I didn't know you, but I knew that you will understand my accent, you will understand what I'm experiencing, and even if you didn't have the answer, I knew that you would listen to me because you're a black person. And those are the kind of interactions that I have on a regular basis, and that has prompted me to provide that listening ear, because we have professors like Susie who listens to every student, and I'm wondering, if when Susie gets home, she probably just shuts out her family and say, "I've heard enough for the day. No more talking, please." It is something that we deal with on a regular basis, of being the only one in the class, in the office, at the university, and I'm excited for the new changes that is about to come on campus, and I'm really excited to hear your experiences as well. So thanks.
Well, we can clearly see how important having someone that represents you as a Black student is within an educational space. So I want to go back to some of our panelists, our student panelists. So what about the Black Student Support Group and Office? How have you found that to support your educational career so far? Renaj?
Yeah, as Randy was speaking, I definitely, even before I even stepped onto MSVU, I remember I had an issue with a professor, and just kind of communicating, and it was I was very much lost in communication with that professor, and I just was oh, this isn't looking good for me choosing MSVU. And then, it's funny, the MSVU website didn't even have a student support or something, right? I didn't find any, but then I saw Black support, and I was like, oh, okay. So I did that, and then Randy right away got in contact with me, and right away, and I thought Randy was actually a student, right? Because it said Black student support, so I thought this was a student run thing, and then Randy's oh, hey, and I was oh, okay, this is whatever. And yeah, I mean just the that feeling of just having someone there that was had some power, right? I mean, he had the resources available to him, and it really made me feel kind of taken care of. And I felt that he was very honest with me too. I mean, he literally said that, what, listen, I know that you had a bad first experience, but I'm not going to tell you to come to MSVU, right? I mean, I'm not going to say that, right? Because I know their experiences with Black students and whatnot. And he was real with me. And that was, I think that was pretty comforting. And that kind of was okay, you know what, that definitely helped me to feel comfortable. And also while I'm at MSVU, I know that he's there to talk to and stuff like that too. So that really makes me feel pretty good.
Yeah, it's certainly an invaluable resource to have. Noemi, would you care to add as well? And we are running a bit late, so just about 40 seconds if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah. So for me, the Black Student Support Office was really my first point of contact with the community, and stepping into a space where I knew other people would relate and they would understand, and I could talk with them and create connections. That was really important to me because I also came here with nobody. So that was really important to have that space, and they're doing a really good job in supporting the students that identify as Black at the Mount. Reddy does a really good job.
Yes, he certainly does. So we've both discussed an external support group through Randy, and we even have professors as well within our institution that are looking out for us, trying to create that inclusive space as well. Reflecting on all of your experiences so far, how do you feel the Black Student Support Group and being at the Mount has benefited your educational experience holistically?
I would have failed my thesis without the Black Student Support Office because I needed a a way to get my research out there, and I didn't know how. And I approached Randy, and he was like, "Don't worry about it. We'll share it. We'll spread the word. You'll be fine." And thanks to him, I will pass and graduate.
Yeah.
So definitely positive experience.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Tamilola, would you like to share?
Okay, I think I have a lot of experience with Black student support, but I would just like to share that one very major thing that helped me with my study was that, as I mentioned earlier, when I came, I think I became more timid, but joining the Black student community, it made me more vocal as I used to be when I was back home. So, it kind of gave me a voice, like in class, because most times when I joined, I would not just say anything. I don't want to contribute because, first of all, there's the whole accent issue. There are like so many issues, so I would not just want to talk. But then, with the Black student community, then at that time, we were able to talk about all of these things, and I felt like I was able to contribute more in class, actually.
Yes.
Yes, so it helped me a lot. And in situations where you find difficult, you're able to reach out to them, and many times they will just support you. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your contribution, Tamilola. It was much appreciated. Would anyone like to contribute to this question before we move on? Okay.
Sorry. Could I just add, as a faculty member, sorry, Nicholas, yes. I didn't mean to take so long to find my mic. I just wanted to say, as a faculty member who, does research projects, and I'm always looking for students, a lot of the projects I do are with the African Canadian community. So this, the Black Student Office has been very helpful to me as a researcher to find research assistants and find students who are willing to support the research and be involved in the research. So I just wanted to add that piece. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're rounding off to the end of our first podcast, but before we do, I would just like to get 2 questions from the audience. Are there any questions that anyone might have for any of our panelists? We'll just wait for about 45 more seconds, if you don't mind.
I actually had a question, and it was, I guess, directed to just Black support in general. And my question is there a space at MSVU right now where Black students can just kind of come together and just kind of talk and share their experiences, a club or a meeting or something like that? I mean, is there, and if the answer is no, is there room to create a space?
Randy, would you like to add to that, as you are the expert within the MSVU community?
Gee, I was afraid you were going to ask the expert about that. My quick answer to that is COVID caused us not to be on campus yet. So right now, no, you're not welcome on campus in any space. And Timmy might be the expert in answering this question for us. Go on, Timmy.
But even a virtual space would be great too. You just meet up virtually to talk about it as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Actually, there's a physical space at the Mount, the Black Student Support Center. So I think because of COVID, if you're on campus now, you would know about it. Yeah. So there's an actual space. And again, most times when we want to have our meetings, we usually use the arts center.
Art gallery, yeah.
Art gallery, yeah. Actually, yes.
Yeah, but in terms of the space, I've never actually made it to the office space. I just went back to the Black Student Office in September of last year. And the space has always been online.
But we advocate for a bigger space though, because that space is very small and
yes.
Yeah, it's a little space by the student success area, and it has a couch and some refreshments in there, if I remember. And I think there's a picture of this up online somewhere. It is a small space, as you said. But I just see someone has mentioned there's a club called African Students at the Mount. And I like that idea, Vernage, to set up a virtual space. I think that would be fantastic. Just so, during COVID-19, any kind of connection is a wonderful opportunity. So thanks for that suggestion, Vernage.
Yes, those were certainly great suggestions. And I think coming down to the end of our first podcast, we've really highlighted the importance of creating that safe space and a sense of community for Black students within a university institution. So just to end, I would just like to thank everyone for taking the time out today to participate in our first podcast under the Boba Tree project. Thank you for our amazing speakers today, panelists and staff alike. It's important that we continue to address these themes and key issues that are faced by Black students within our community, and also try to implement ways that we can foster a deeper connection within our community and developing those safe spaces. In context with the Boba tree, there is an African proverb that states, "Wisdom is like a boba tree, but no one individual can embrace it," which means that all of your opinions are just as valid, and we can work together in a collaborative manner to create a stronger community for Black students at the Mount. So don't forget to like us on Facebook and share this podcast. You may also find us from previous recordings and future recordings at www.msvu.ca/Black Student Support. Thank you very much. Bye for now.